Hello everybody, it's me GhostCritic. It's Friday, it's time for a comic book review video, and it's a lot more settled this week with only 6 books for this main video. Don't forget, at the end of this I will be uploading my pick of the week. If you've watched my Wednesday's pull list video, by the end of this you should already know what my pick of the week is. But that's for another video. This is about the other books that I picked up on my pull list and to let you know what I thought about them. We're kicking off this week with Guardians 3000, issue number 4 from Marvel. A book I still haven't put on my pull list, although I keep getting it every month. There is just something there that's holding me back being fully committed to this book. We have this issue focusing primarily on Vance Astro and his history and how he became Vance Astro, and the, you could say, somewhat tragic events that transpired in his past. Of course, the end of last issue, the ship exploded. We have half the team still battling these asentients, which are like robotic Iron Men, and it just seems to feel like it's just always one big fight. And the art in here is fantastic. It's not up everyone's alley, I know, but it is that kind of real kind of comic booky art, very pumped up superheroes, big, bold, brash. There's no subtlety in this book, but it's still fun and entertaining regardless. Then eventually, like all good superheroes should realise, is that maybe they should just stop fighting and have a chat with the Asentients. Find out exactly why they are fighting each other. On the other side, we have the other half of the team who were rescued by Star-Lord at the end of last issue. There's a lot of talking going on, and it's a lot of reiteration over last issues, where our young human Gina Drake is the key to stopping this kind of temporal decay that's happening. But that's all we get. Why is she the key? Push the story forward. And maybe this is why I am not fully committed to this book yet, because it seems with every issue we are retreading old ground and nothing is going forward. Visually, it's so much fun to look at. The story just needs to pick up, push forward, and get over the kind of setup. We get it. I need something more substance in this. We get a few characters, extra characters thrown in, a mystery woman at the very end. We get a member of the Nova Corps. But again, they're kind of left hanging for us, you know, to want more, to want to know why, and buy the next issue. From Dynamite, we've got the Twilight Zone, issue number 11, and already Straczynski is living up to his promise, where he is converging all the characters from not just this particular story arc, but the 2 previous. This story arc has been focusing on our gentleman here, Ray, who is a private investigator who is looking into the death of the CEO's son many years back. Or there's a little bit of time travel involved here. What Ray is doing at the moment, he is trying to find someone who was at this rally where the CEO's son died and was murdered, to replace him with this other person. But every person he finds, he's trying to find someone whose life has not amounted to anything and who wouldn't be missed. And every person he finds, he can't bring himself to say, well, life without them wouldn't have made a difference. I already said in my last review of this, you know, it felt very much like it's going to be Ray who's going to take the bullet. But now now Straczynski has introduced Ray to our other characters, because we get little kind of introductions between these characters. So we have Diana the waitress from the second story arc. We have Ray going into her coffee house, and Trevor the embezzler from the first story arc recognises the PI and wants the PI Ray to help him. So it is all converging, and now it's like, well, is it going to be at least one of these three that takes the bullet? So this young son of a CEO can make something of his life. The promises that he wanted to put forward for a better world, a better life, a better America will come to fruition. So you are left on this cliffhanger, and it is a cliffhanger because the last issue is coming up. Issue 12 is the conclusion of this kind of maxi series. I don't believe there's another one after that, which is a shame. I've enjoyed the series. It's not been pure Twilight Zone, but it has had those kind of Twilight Zone-ish twists. Batman Eternal issue number 41. Batman Eternal without Batman in the actual issue. Instead, we are looking at Red Robin, Batgirl, and Red Hood, who are staking out a warehouse where all the children that have been infected with the nanobots have been kind of converging, and for some mysterious reason they are building a strange kind of machine. To do what, we don't know. This is what these guys are here for, and obviously to take it down and try and save and rescue these children. We have Harper Row in tow, being kind of intel girl, but she really deep down, wants to get her hands dirty and go in there. But Red Robin is firmly against that, telling her to stay behind. So you've got them charging into this factory, and we find out who is the kind of villain behind this part of this overreaching story, and it is the Mad Hatter. Now, the Mad Hatter is not a character that I'm very familiar with. I've read a lot of Batman stories, but none of them have ever really featured Mad Hatter. So I don't know whether this is in keeping with his character. Yes, he has that whole kind of wanting to mind control people, and this, I suppose, goes along that route because he's infected them with these nano machines, these nanobots. But is he that kind of villain that has that forward thinking and kind of, I don't know, chutzpah to get this kind of big job done? Of course, everything goes wrong. Our superheroes, Red Robin and Batgirl and Red Hood, get taken over by the nanobots themselves. So it is finally up to Harper Row as she dons the kind of, I guess, a prototype of what we've already seen of the, she called herself Bluebird, and I just found it quite funny that she had time to put mousse in her hair and make it all stand up on end. I thought that was quite amusing. We see a little kind of small focus on Spoiler, who's still on the run. She obviously has this bounty on her head and everyone's trying to cash in on it, and we see her going up against our next kind of bounty hunter, so to speak. Only there is a little twist which catches her off guard. This guy isn't here to kill her. He is here to protect her for his client. Obviously, we know from the future episode in the Batman title, this is more likely to be Catwoman, who wants her protected. The artwork in here, it was odd, to say the least. It felt very much like an Allred comic, but more polished, and I don't mean that negatively, because obviously Allred is a great artist, but it had that kind of kooky, kind of hipster, out of left field kind of vibe to it, and not an art style that is really in keeping with what we've previously had, regardless, you know, that it was there's been a lot of artists along the way. So it was a little bit of a tiny jolt, seeing these characters. Again, I haven't read it, but it kind of felt like Batman 66 as well, that kind of vibe, that kind of feel to it as well, the way the characters were drawn. But it was still a good job. The story was okay. It's Batman Eternal is kind of floundering a little and not quite knowing what to do with itself. It is perhaps 10 or 20 issues off now and should really be building to a crescendo for a weekly. I mean, if it was a monthly, I could maybe give it some leeway, but given it's a weekly comic, and these are coming out regularly, there's no breaks. We're coming to the finale now of this, I guess, volume 1, because there could be a volume 2 of this. So let's kick stuff into gear, Snyder. Sort out your writers, your pacing and your plotting. Moving on to 10 Grand, another Straczynski written book from Joe's Comic under the Image label, and this took me by surprise in a very emotional way. I've not loved this book since Temple Smith came off it, but I at least have appreciated the story that Straczynski was telling. But I really didn't expect what came with this issue. And it kind of went from being a very kind of violent first half of the book to an incredibly emotional, touching last half. What we have is the kind of, we're tying up the loose ends now. Joe has taken down the Hell villain, and it's time for the angelic heavenly angels to pay him his due after being used for so long. And so on the one hand, we see him taking out his sadistic revenge on the man who killed, or was at least responsible for, his girlfriend's death. And it's one of those where, you know, you think, I mean, the guy is already in hell, how can Joe do anything more to him? But very cleverly, and again, we've said this so many times, this book is very kind of Hellblazer, John Constantine, from his Vertigo days. There is a very clever twist where if you're in hell, what is the worst thing that can be worse than being in hell, and the punishments that they can give out, and that's by providing someone with hope. And when it's just out of reach, though, how much more painful can that be than the physical and mental torture that hell can throw down on you? He has a good old pummeling on one of the angels for treating him and using him so badly throughout this series. And eventually we get to the more softer, the more touching second half of this, where we have the final deal he makes with the angel, where he gets to be with his girlfriend one last time. The main premise of this book was always Joe had made this deal, he couldn't die, and whenever that happened, he would get to see his girlfriend for maybe a minute, and then he would be brought back to life. Obviously a minute isn't long enough, so he gets to spend he asks for an hour, and he takes her from, they kind of, I guess, go back in time somewhat to when she's on a life support system, and he takes her away from that. They just sit on a park bench and they tell each other how much they love each other, and it's so emotional, and I can feel myself getting choked up just talking about it now, so you can imagine what I was like when I was reading it. It came right out of the blue. It was not something I expected, but it felt right at the same time. A fitting end for this series. As I've always said, it's such a shame Temple Smith couldn't stay on it for the whole duration. Astro City issue 9 on the Vertigo label. We continue looking back at the history of our superheroine, Quarrel, and kind of her rise to becoming a superhero, and especially her relationship with her kind of boyfriend partner, Crackerjack. And again, Busiek is such a great storyteller. He manages to balance both the kind of the history part of Quarrel's life, throwing in a ton of action, but at the same time giving it an emotion behind it. It's just genius. Like I say, he's such a great storyteller. I've not always been a fan when Busiek on Astro City does these longer story arcs, and I preferred his done-in-ones, but this I've not had a problem with. I've enjoyed it from issue to issue, from page to page turn. And it's not, I mean, we see her growing not just as a superhero, you know, being somewhat of a vigilante right at the start, teaming up with certain members of the Astro City superhero roster, and then becoming part of a superhero team. But we see her growing as a person, as a woman, coming into her own, gaining that confidence. But what's surprising, and what I realised by the end of this issue, was that what Busiek is actually doing here, he's writing a love story. It's a romance tale, albeit a quite twisted one at times, a quite abusive one, but there is, in essence, a love story there. And it just, again, so many comics this week have taken me by surprise that I didn't think that is where they were going to go. But just another fantastic issue of Astro City. Finally, for this video, I have Shutter issue 8, and after the shock ending of issue 7, where we saw Kate being stabbed in the stomach, and was she going to survive that? She's okay. She's alright. This is very much about Kate and her sister arguing about Daddy Dearest, and her sister trying to get through to Kate that, you know, Daddy wasn't actually that great a guy. There is a whole history, a past that you don't know about and that you should. It wasn't all about trips to the moon, going on high adventures. He had a dark, sordid past, and it's something Kate will not reconcile with. Obviously there is the thought in her head because she presumed her father died, but given that he apparently has this son who could only have been born after he died, it makes sense that he is still alive somewhere. And so it's up to her sister to, you know, shake her up, and the only person who hates Kate's father more than Kate's sister does is Kate's mother. And that looks to be the next tale we are going to get from Joe Keatinge and Layla Del Duca. This is topped and tailed by a very kind of sweet story regarding Alarm Cat. Alarm Cat having had its head blown off in the last issue, and the relationship the cat is having with the young boy, Kate's brother. It does a very clever thing at the beginning of the issue where it kind of pays homage to those short newspaper strips of old. So you've got a version of Peanuts, Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes, Family Circle. There's a couple more that I don't recognise, but I'm sure someone who's read this will probably know and be able to fill me in. But it's a very clever way of bringing in Alarm Cat as a fully fledged character. And by the end of this issue, Alarm Cat kind of gets a new head. A great story, gorgeous art as always. It's mad as always, lots to look at, lots of inventive, imaginative surroundings to gore Cat while you read this excellent story. And that pretty much wraps everything up this week. Of course, there is my pick of the week video, which will go up straight after this, so look out for that in your feed. It'll only come up in your feed if you're a subscriber to the channel though. So if you're new here and you just enjoyed what you watched, hit the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any more of my videos. Thank you all for watching. Give this video a big thumbs up and let me know in the comments section below what you thought of the books that I read this week, if you read them as well, and let me know what else you were reading and what you thought of it too. Till next week, when we'll have a fresh batch of comics to read and devour. I'll see you then. Bye bye.